Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History. Signed, sealed, remembered, rings of truth. And today we are returning to the Circle G so that we can ride horses with Elvis. But before we get there, we're going to listen to some Circle G dreams. And I'll see you on the other side. Thank you so much for coming, Heath and Gunn. Happy to see you.
I drew a line in the dirt, said this land could be yours. 1 acre each, a house, a porch, a door. I saw the light in their eyes, like stars in the dust. But the paper stayed blank, and the dream gathered rust. I wasn't cash poor, I was rich in belief, trying to carve out a kingdom beneath cotton clouds and the Mississippi sun. But every time I reached, the dream came undone. Don't you forget what I tried to make, a home for the hearts I refused to forsake. They called it a whim, they called it a waste, but I saw a commune, not just empty space. Don't you forget me when the fences arise, when the ranch house fades and the silence lies. I gave you the down payment, I gave you the land, but the kingdom never built still lives in my hand. They said they said legal red tape, but I saw a chapel in every landscape, a replica of Graceland, a circle of trust. But the curl was bust, and the dream turned to dust. I signed the checks, I made the calls, watched the trailers roll in like prayer storms. But Vernon's face, tight as a gate, held back the flood of what I tried to create. Don't you forget what I tried to give, a place where my people could finally live. They called it a farm, they called it a phase, but I saw a future in the ranch's haze. Don't you forget me when the lights go out, when the house plans fade and the voices doubt. I gave you the down payment, I gave you the land, but the kingdom never built still lives in my hand. Still lives in my hand. Still lives in my hand.
Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today we're going to hear the echo of the rings of truth. In yesterday's episode, we went way back in time, and we visited Elvis in high school and his football coaches. And then we jumped forward to the day of his wedding, and we met a man who's going to be important to the future of Elvis after 1967, and that's Dick Grobe, who will eventually be the head of his security. Or some disagree, and he was just a security guy. But today we've returned to the ranch. And hello, Keith. Hello, Colleen. Hello, Gunn. Hello, Anna. Thank you all so much for coming. We're back at the ranch. Elvis is riding horses every day. It's sometime in May or early June 1967. And it seems from the stories that we've heard that everything is perfect. But everything is not perfect on the ranch. So yesterday we heard some very uplifting and wonderful stories, and today it's not going to be quite the same. We're going to have a little more of the reality that depressed Elvis move in, so that we get a little bit of a better feeling on what was actually happening on the ranch. Some of the things that he had to deal with that were not what he was seeking on the ranch. And Keith's asking, how is the diet going for Elvis at this time? So that diet would have been all the way through clam bake, I'm sure. And he's probably off it somewhat at this time. However, he does have to return to Speedway in the very near future, within 6 weeks. And people say that he's very slim when he gets to Speedway, so I don't think it's a problem for him at this moment. I don't think he's overeating like he was in February. Colleen says that yesterday's video, when Elvis said he couldn't afford lunch, it broke her heart. I know what you mean, Colleen. But that coach, he stepped up, and every once in a while, gave Elvis a quarter. And to me, that means that coach, he recognized that Elvis, he had more important things to do than football. The coach held no grudge with Elvis. He tried to support him. And Jerry Schilling, who's here at the ranch with his new wife, Sandy. And they're in a trailer that Elvis has acquired for them. Jerry says he's making payments on it. Billy Smith said the only trailer that ever got put in anybody else's name was Billy Smith's. Which would mean it's not clear to me that Jerry's making any payments, because that would be towards a mortgage of some kind. But Jerry says Elvis's unlimited spending and gifting was now creating more pettiness among the guys. Somebody was always upset that so-and-so had the nicer trailer, the fancier saddle, or the better colored truck. So Elvis has bought the people that are close to him, the ones that he wanted to be around him on this ranch. He's bought them a lot of stuff. Stuff they never had. For the most part, brand new stuff. And some of them aren't satisfied because somebody got something that was a little better. And it's not just a few of them. It's enough that there's a pettiness among the guys. And I'm sure it's not just among the guys. I'm sure it spreads to their wives. Probably even into their kids. Suddenly all these people that were so happy to get what Elvis had to give away, now they're bickering among themselves about who got the nicer this or that. And it's all getting back to Elvis. Hi, Pat. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And since we're already talking about some negative things for Elvis, let's go ahead and pile on with Albert Goldman, who's a writer that really dislikes Elvis. But he got a lot of information from Lamar Fike and directly from many other people that were there, that knew Elvis, that were even in the inner circle. So we can't just dismiss Albert. We have to strip away his negative opinions so that we can take the facts from what he's written. And Keith says there's a lot of nitpicking within the group. There's a lot of jealousy within the group. There's a lot of bitterness towards each other. There's a lot of disharmony and a desire to divide amongst the group. Only Elvis unifies them. The only thing all these people have in common is Elvis. Elvis sees something special in each one of them, but they do not, in return, see something special in each other. That's the group dynamic that's going on here. And Albert Goldman says, not far away at Collinsville, Tennessee, Elvis learned there was a ranch that bred prized Tennessee walking horses. Elvis went immediately to the GLL Farms and met the owner, George L. Lennox Jr. Though there were 300 horses at the ranch, the only one that interested Elvis was the prize of the lot, a famous stud named Carbon Copy. The asking price for this one animal was $100,000. What restrained Elvis from buying it is unknown, but after repeated visits and discussions, he finally relinquished his plan to purchase the horse and establish the Presley stud. So we've seen that Elvis had dreams for the Circle G, big dreams. One of those was a mansion to dwarf Graceland, where he would move, and it would become his center of operations as Graceland had been. Another was to surround that mansion with the houses of his friends. These plans have been temporarily paused, perhaps destroyed. He's pivoted and he's got the trailers in for at least temporarily. He's still pushing through plans. And he's thinking he wants to be the top one of the guys that are raising cattle in this area, and he wants to be the top guy for the horses. So he finds the best horse in the area. And he's going to use it to build his whole stable around. And we've heard that horses at this time are going for around $300 for a great horse. And he's paying something like $3,000 for him. And he goes to this guy and he says the asking price is $100,000. Well, that's got to be some kind of put on. I mean, I don't know where Albert comes up with that number, but if that is what the guy asked, it was basically the same as saying, I don't want to sell him. And we've often heard that no one could resist Elvis, that he always got what he wanted. But in this case, he didn't get this horse. And this was one of his dreams. And again, another portion of a dream fell through. I don't know exactly when this happened on the ranch. I kind of feel like it was back in February. And again, this wasn't the end of the dream. Elvis could pivot and move on to another horse. A lot of horses out there. This isn't the only stable and the only great horse. But he really wanted this horse, and somehow he couldn't make it happen, and I'm sure that bothered him. But then again, he's seen the cross, saw it on the circle, he knows he's walking the right path, and maybe the resistance in the universe to him getting this horse tells him he shouldn't have it. Because like Albert says, what restrained Elvis from buying it is unknown. But after repeated visits and discussions, he relinquished his plan. So Albert doesn't have any idea, and neither did any of the guys, why Elvis just decided he wasn't going to purchase this horse. But it seems to me he couldn't talk the guy out of it. Now, we're going to move on to a story that I know happened. Well, it's at least placed. I know that the placement of the story occurs after they're married, after Elvis and Priscilla are married, and they're on the ranch. And Pat says that these people were being childish about someone getting something better than the other. Exactly. This is the slot car room, where all the guys had a slot car, their very own special one. And then there became a lot of bickering about who was the best and who had the better car and who was the winner and blah, blah, blah. Probably were betting money on this between themselves, and things got out of control, and Elvis just got rid of the slot cars. Decided it wasn't any fun anymore. They had sucked all the fun out of it. Well, this is exactly how they did it, and they're doing it here again at the Circle G. We know the slot cars already happened because that's the room where they have the second reception at the end of May that they invite all their friends to that didn't get to go to their wedding in Las Vegas. And Gunn says that they're spoiled by Elvis's generosity. And Gunn says it could not be a money issue about the horse. I don't know, even for $100,000, that's a lot even for Elvis. But yes, I would tend to agree. I don't think he would have let the money stop him. I think he would have pushed on through with the sale. So it feels like the man would not sell the horse. And why would he? It was his best horse, right? Like, his whole livelihood may depend on this horse. And it's the only one Elvis is interested in. But of course, Elvis is only interested in the best. He wants to go right to the top. But in the story we're going to look at now, Priscilla Presley, she says that Elvis's wedding ring was a little bit big on his finger. Well, let's take a look at that wedding ring. Woo, it does look really big. I'm just kidding. It's large on the screen. Of course, if you're watching on a phone, it's probably kind of small. And just as a technical aside, if you happen to be watching on a phone or a mobile device, and YouTube is able to detect that, I am broadcasting in both vertical and horizontal. So if you're watching in vertical and you cannot see all of the picture for something, and you're thinking, I wish he hadn't cut this off, if you turn your device to the side, YouTube should automatically detect that you're in horizontal, and it will show you the entire widescreen view. But I broadcast in both so that a lot of times when you're watching by phone, you're holding it in your hand, and it's often more convenient to hold it vertically. And basically what it does is it shows you the middle of the widescreen picture. But that's just a technical aside. Back into this story. Priscilla Presley says, Elvis's wedding ring was a little big on his finger. We were racing our horses, Rising Sun and Domino, at our Circle G ranch. Well, we know Rising Sun and we know Domino. We're pretty familiar with those horses. Domino is the horse that Elvis bought Priscilla for Christmas, that many say started off this whole journey, although it turns out there may have been a couple of horses previously, but Elvis did begin to ride Domino, and he liked it. And of course, they'd gotten Sandy, at the time Jerry's fiance, they'd gotten her a horse. Then they got Jerry a horse, and Elvis had to get a horse too, and that's the Rising Sun. And then he ended up getting 17 horses. And then he bought the Circle G Ranch. So that's where they're racing at, and it's after they're married because Elvis has the ring. And Priscilla says he raised his hand and he pointed to head toward the house, and it fell off his finger. It was impossible to find. I did give him another one that looked just like it. And Gunn says that she does not see any inscription in the ring. I have one other picture that I don't have prepped to show, but it does not show an inscription either. But I kind of would not expect an inscription because Elvis had this ring custom made to his specifications through his jeweler, Harry Levitch, in Memphis. So it's not like anyone gave it to him. He bought it for himself. He may have, it does seem like maybe he would have put an inscription inside. But I know that Harry carried this ring with him to Las Vegas and gave it to Elvis the day of the wedding. Now, Priscilla says here that it was lost and that she had another one made just like it. But Harry Levitch gave a letter of authenticity with this ring and said this is the ring, that this is not a copy. He didn't say it's not a copy. He said this is the ring from the day that he made for the wedding. He doesn't mention anything about a copy. So Priscilla says this ring was never found and that she had a copy made. Harry says this is the original ring. There's others that say it's the original ring, but they're not jewelers. One is George Klein. So I would expect George Klein to tell the truth about this, but at the same time, I can't expect him to be an expert about a piece of jewelry. But Harry says it's the ring. So you have to decide for yourself. Is the ring that we're looking at, is it truly Elvis's wedding ring, or was it a copy that Priscilla had made? Whoever bought it at the auction believed it was the real thing. Now, Joe Smith, who is Billy Smith's wife, and Joe and Billy Smith are living on the Circle G. Elvis bought them the very first trailer on the Circle G. Some have described it as looking like a wood or a log cabin, which would be a wood cabin, but it's a log cabin. And that it originally sat next to a barn, which I believe was so they could hook it up to electric and possibly to a septic system that was there in the front of the property. And then when Elvis had all of the utilities and septic built for the rest of the trailers in the back of the property, he had their trailer moved to it. But they're here. And Gunn says that you don't lose a ring that easy. It doesn't just fall off. So I don't know. That's what Priscilla says. But what Joe Smith says is supposedly he lost it riding along the highway and they never found it. And so Joe's indicating that they were riding along the side of the property. That's not the back entrance where there's another little road back there. And that's where the entrance into the back is. And that's where the trailers are, like a little trailer park area, because it's all running off those same utilities. But the main road it branches off on, that's what they're riding along. And there's a huge fence there. Elvis has had this giant fence erected. But they're riding along, and Joe says supposedly. So because Joe says the word supposedly, and perhaps I'm reading too much into a single word, but as I watched them tell this story on their channel, Elvis Fans Matter, it certainly appears to me that they were not present at this ride. I'm sure they were on the Circle G, but I don't think they were with Elvis when this ring was lost. Because Joe said supposedly he lost it riding along the highway. Well, if they'd been with him, I don't think she'd say supposedly. And Billy Smith describes it as he had it up over his scarf. So he's saying that Elvis had like a bandana wrapped around his neck and he was using the ring to hold that bandana together. If you've ever seen someone in the Boy Scouts, they wear a similar kind of it's usually a metal ring to hold their handkerchief around their shoulders. And I was in a club that was similar, and we had a plastic piece that did the same thing. It was a plastic ring. But in this case, Elvis was using his wedding ring, according to Billy. However, because neither he nor Joe were there, I don't think they really know. I think they're taking this story from somebody else. Somebody's told them this, and I don't know whether that person was witness to this or not. Now, we know that Priscilla was witness to it, but we don't know about Billy and Joe. But Billy thinks that he was wearing it over his scarf. Now, we get the impression that this story was told to Billy by Elvis. But I don't know if that's true. And Gunn says that Elvis had a lot of rings through the years and they didn't fall off. So that's a good point too, Gunn, that Elvis was not an amateur at jewelry. He did have this custom made for himself, so he knew his own size. And if it had been loose, he could have probably got Harry to do something about it in Las Vegas. Because I'm sure they could have gone to some jeweler in Las Vegas and borrowed some tools. And there is a jeweler named Mordecai in Las Vegas that Elvis does do a lot of business with, but I don't think he was doing business with him at this time. But I don't think it'd be hard for Harry and Elvis to get this fixed if they needed to at that moment. And of course, it's been a few days and he's been wearing this. So if it was loose and bothering him, I don't think he'd be wearing it either. But maybe he's lost some weight since he's been on the Circle G and now it's slipping off. At least that's what Priscilla says. She doesn't say he's lost weight. She just says it's loose on his finger. I don't want to misspeak for her. But now we're going to hear from somebody else. Somebody who was there. Like I said, I don't think we can take for granted that Billy and Joe Smith were there. I think they were on the property, but not at the site, not the scene of the action. So in this picture, we can see Elvis on a horse, the rising sun, and there is a man in denim next to him. And that man is Mike McGregor. Now, you can't see his face. You can only see him from the back. But you can see that he's doing something with Son's bridle. And Mike is the man who takes care of all the horses. He's the horse expert. He's also a trick rider. He can do some fancy tricks on the horses. And he teaches Elvis and the guys some of the tricks, and he's one of the men out here, one of the guys, one of the boys. But he's an expert at what he does. And so they listen to him because he knows these animals. He also works with leather. He makes some items that Elvis wears on stage. And he makes some personal items that Elvis and his father and probably some of the guys carry. And later on, he'll sell many, many leather pieces to Elvis fans. Hi, Lorna. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Colleen says that when Elvis was on stage, he would put a Band-Aid or tape to hold his rings on. So I think he would do the same with his wedding band. Exactly, Colleen. He knew what to do if he needed to. Although he wasn't at that stage performance time, but he'd been wearing these rings, and he performed before, and I'm sure rings had slipped off his fingers when the fans had touched him. That again, he's an expert at jewelry. I don't have any doubt he knew what to do. And so it does seem odd that, of all people, Elvis would lose that piece of jewelry in this way. But here's what Mike says. Mike says Elvis was the greatest guy in the world to work for. Working for him was kind of like doing something for a friend. He never even raised his voice to me. And now we're going to hear from Mike, but not directly from Mike. We're going to hear Mike filtered through Charlie Hodge. So Charlie Hodge told a story that was told to him by Mike McGregor. So I don't really love to tell the stories that are one person removed in this way. But I know that we all love Charlie. And I think that we have a lot of trust and faith in what Charlie says, that he does not intentionally lie, that he tells us his memory as he remembers it. And I believe that this story has the ring of truth. And as far as I know, Mike McGregor never came out and said it wasn't true. And he would have had access to the story. So I'm gonna tell you what Mike said. Mike said, according to Charlie, I took care of everybody's horse, but the horses I took the best care of were Elvis's horse, Rising Sun, and Priscilla's Domino. Elvis liked to race them. They'd go streaking up and down the hills. They'd go clattering over the wood bridge across the lake. They'd race all the way to the far side of the ranch and back. Naturally, I tried to keep the boss's horse in better shape than the others, so he could win. The boss loved winning, and I wanted him to feel good about his life. But Priscilla would try to beat him every time they raced. So Mike reveals that Elvis has a side that likes to win. He's got a competitive spirit, and he likes to be number one, which I think we all know about Elvis. That rings true. And he says that because he knows this, he keeps Elvis's horse in a little bit better shape than everybody else's. Not keeping anybody's horse in bad shape, but he's doing some extra things for Rising Sun. Taking a little more care of Rising Sun. And that's allowing Elvis to win some of these races. He's part of the team. But that Priscilla is just as competitive as Elvis is with Elvis, and she wants to beat Elvis at these horse races. That there is an ongoing competition between Elvis and Priscilla. And Mike says sometimes Priscilla would come out to the barn alone, and her pregnant with Lisa Marie. She'd grab a hold of Domino's mane and pull herself up on his bare back. She'd ride off across the ranch like some kind of Native American. So Mike describes Priscilla, even while pregnant, riding bareback on her horse. So that must have been at some point after they came back from Speedway, because that's when she announced her pregnancy. And I don't think Mike would have known about it before that. And now Mike's going to tell the story about the lost ring. But he doesn't set specifically when it is, but because of where it's set within the overall story, this perhaps happened after they came back from Speedway. But I feel like it had to have happened before they went, during this initial 6-week period. And it's because the very first thing Mike says is one time Elvis set up a big race. And so they're going to race these horses. And I don't think he would have wanted Priscilla to be racing against him if he knew she was pregnant. That's just my feeling about it. I don't know for sure. But by the time they came back from Speedway, I don't think he would have allowed this. He would have raced, but Priscilla would not have been allowed to. And Gunn says, so being nice and giving, he may have given the ring away to someone, not telling anyone. Well, we're going to get there, Gunn. At this point, he's got the ring. They're both wearing it, and they are wearing their rings. And they're about to have this race that Elvis has set up. And Mike says, Priscilla took off her diamond ring and slipped it over the end of a bandana handkerchief. She tied it around her neck. Mike tells a story that sounds very similar to one that we have already heard. And Mike goes on. He says they all charged off. When they came thundering up to the fence on the other side of the ranch, Priscilla suddenly grabbed her throat. She looked shocked. Elvis rained Rising Sun and wheeled him alongside Domino. What's wrong? He said. The ring, Priscilla said, feeling her bare neck. My bandana came off. The ring is gone. Elvis raised one hand like a cavalry officer and said, We've lost Priscilla's diamond. Go back slow and look for it. Now, if you're wondering what Priscilla's ring looks like, it looks something like we see on screen. But what we see is a replica of Priscilla's ring, based on most likely a memory of the ring. It's not even claimed to be an exact replica. Most likely because there was no model to be used. This particular ring was made for a movie about Priscilla's life that was made for ABC TV in the 1980s. And it is not of the same quality or of the same materials that Priscilla's ring was. This is truly a replica. But it gives you an idea of what they're looking for in this field. And so Elvis has told everybody to go back slow and look for it. And Mike McGregor says, we walked the horses back slowly through the tall grass, trailing Elvis and Priscilla. So Mike has revealed that he himself was part of this race because he's part of it. He's walking the horses back slowly through the tall, dry grass, trailing Elvis and Priscilla. And Colleen says that seems pretty reckless to tie that very expensive ring onto a bandana like that instead of shoving it in your pocket or giving it to someone. I guess it kind of does. But we were led to believe it was someone else that was reckless. Now, I said the way that they told the story, it sounded like Billy Smith and Joe Smith weren't there. Let's hear what Mike has to say about it. Mike says we walked the horses back slowly through the tall grass, trailing Elvis and Priscilla. Billy Smith got off his horse and walked ahead of it so he could see down in the grass better. Well, I was wrong. Billy Smith's there. Billy Smith's looking for a ring that Elvis just said, hey, Priscilla lost her diamond, let's look for it. I guess maybe Billy didn't hear him. or doesn't remember years later. I don't know if Joe's there. If she is, she apparently doesn't remember Elvis saying that either. And their recollection is it's Elvis's ring that's been lost, and it was Elvis that had it on the bandana. It's very confusing, right? Because it seems like somebody's got to be mistaken in their memory here. But who is it? I mean, I don't think Mike McGregor is telling this story to make any money from it, because it's Charlie that's publishing it in his book. And Mike McGregor goes on and he says, I jumped off. Then everybody got down and walked. At the top of the ridge, Priscilla stopped. Off to the right, you could see the tall white cross on the other side of the lake, the thing that first attracted Elvis to the ranch. Priscilla said, I think this is where it may be. Priscilla slid out of her saddle, and we all got down on our hands and knees and started poking through the grass. Before long, Elvis sat down in the dry grass. He clasped his hands across his knees and looked off into the distance at the soaring white cross that dominated the skyline. He patted Priscilla on the back as she crawled past him. Elvis told her, quit worrying about it, Priscilla. It was just a diamond. We can always find another one. Priscilla and the rest of us kept looking until it was nearly dark. This is an interesting spot in the story. Elvis lets the ring go as just another material object that has passed through his hands. It was a symbol, but he's had a lot of symbols go through his hands. And for him, they've now spent too much time on this materialistic object. But the others, they continue on their hands and their knees until it is nearly dark, trying to find this precious stone. Priscilla was the last one to give up the search. Now, this story, my belief is it was written by Mike and sent to Charlie. And that Charlie has inserted it unedited into the book, but Charlie may have edited it. But the way that this is put together, and I don't think it was put together purposely by Mike McGregor to do this, but Priscilla is the last person searching for the secular wealth. Elvis is the first to give up the search for the material, for that which is money. Although there is a symbol attached to this piece of money. I mean, we have to bear that in mind. There is a promise and a symbol attached to it. That's strong too. But so Priscilla's either searching for that symbol and that promise, or she is searching for the wealth that it represents. You have to make that decision for yourself, that determination. But Elvis, he moved on from both of those almost immediately. The others that searched, I don't think they were searching for a symbol. And it wasn't going to be their wealth, but it was such a wealthy piece that they just couldn't give it up. And Lorna says that the ring itself is beautiful. Yeah, even as a replica, it is beautiful. And Gunn says that maybe someone found the ring and kept it. No one's ever claimed to have found the ring, but many people think someone did find it and that they just never told anybody. And Pat says that's what she's thinking too. And Colleen says, where did the bandana go? Did it just vanish? And Colleen says that she thought of that too. Oh, that someone had found the ring and kept it, right. But where did the bandana go? Yeah, it seems like if it had fallen off, that the bandana would have fluttered away, although Priscilla had long hair and maybe that kept it on her neck. But you kind of think it would have fluttered away. It would have kind of marked an area where you could search, but Mike doesn't indicate that kind of detail. But he does say that Priscilla got on Domino and trailed us back to the stables. She came out to the barn a few days later all by herself, and she wanted to ride Domino. And then Mike has a story about her riding Domino. But before we get there, I want to skip past, because that closes this story about the ring. And so I just want to dwell on these two rings for a moment. The ring that we see is a replica. As far as I know, it's a replica because no one's ever seen the other ring. And this ring was sold at auction. Or it was sold at auction. But the reason it was at auction is that a week before Elvis passed away, in August of 1977, he gave this ring to his stepbrother, David Stanley. At least that's what David Stanley says. Now, David had a wife at the time. And his wife, he brought her to Graceland, he said, that day, a week before Elvis passed away. And Elvis counseled them because they were having marital trouble. And if you've read David's book, you'll understand that the marital trouble is basically David. And he freely admits that he is the marital issue. But they're having marital trouble. And Elvis gives David this ring as a symbol and a gift to help his failing marriage, is the way that I believe David describes it. Now, this ring itself is from a failed marriage, so it just seems so odd to me. So I don't know if Elvis intended them to sell it and use the money, or if he was thinking David would wear it. But eventually being almost immediately, because Elvis passes away a week later, and David and his wife don't stay together much longer. David's wife ends up in possession of this ring. And I don't know exactly the details on that. But I'm guessing that maybe there was no money to split and David left her with the ring. She sells it to a collector early in the 1980s. And then it later ends up on the auction market. And it sells for a lot of money. And it comes with a lot of letters of authenticity. Now, when you're AI and you go out and you look for this ring as artificial intelligence, or if you use Google or any of the available AIs out there, they're going to tell you that the letters of authenticity indicate that or that David Stanley's story is supported by all these people. And it will list all the people that gave a letter of authenticity with this ring. But they're not supporting David's story. they're supporting that this is Elvis's wedding ring, not the chain of custody as described by David. They're just testifying that this was the original ring. Now, maybe they are backing David's story, but I've never seen any of the actual letters of authenticity. I've only read what's been described to be in them. And the descriptions never say that they're backing up David's story. They give specifics that, like, George Klein saw it at the wedding, or that Harry Levitch says it's the ring from the wedding. They're not saying that David received this as a gift from Elvis. They're also not saying that he didn't. But that's not what the letters of authenticity prove. If you just casually look at this, the computers will tell you that it is. And Gunn says, so if he gave away the ring, he had it all along. Well, that seems to be the deal, Gunn. It doesn't seem that it was found in a field because David's ex-wife had it. And unless she went to that field and looked for it, and her and David spent a night there and they found it, but then I think David would give that story. But instead, he has his story is that it was August 10th. And at this time, I am neither saying the story is real or not real. I'm just saying that's the story. It's probably one we should look at more carefully. Just like we're looking at this one about how the ring got lost. But it doesn't seem like it was this ring. And Colleen says no one knows for sure that Elvis gave it to him or if he swiped it. That's one way to put it. This is a pocket-sized object, and it left Graceland sometime around the time Elvis died. And it later ended up, I think it was in Jimmy Velvet's museum. But this one had provenance with it. You know, so people knew where it came from. Because otherwise, how would you really prove that it was Elvis's ring? And there's obviously a lot more money attached to this than, say, a ball from his pool table. We've seen that out there too with no provenance, but this has a lot more value attached to it in terms of dollars. And Gunn saying, but Priscilla's ring never lost either. Well, no. Nobody's ever seen Priscilla's ring. Priscilla's ring was only seen at the wedding. There are pictures of it from the wedding. There may be pictures of it from, like that, the one on the 29th, the other reception. But when she went to make a movie in the 1980s, they had to make this replica ring. But they did not. It's a replica that is not a precise replica because they did not have a model to use, which would indicate to me there's no original ring. Otherwise, Priscilla would have made it available because the movie was a big deal to her. It was just a television movie, but it was a big deal to her. And as expensive as her ring was, I'm sure there was security that could have been provided for them to use it as the model. But they make it very clear when they sold this one that it's a replica that may not be precisely the same as the one that Priscilla had. And Gunn says such a messy ring story. Right. Because one of the members that was there gives, well, two of the members that are there give alternate stories to one of the people who owns one of the rings. And so I guess you guys have to make up your minds for yourself as to who's telling the truth on this one. and what's really going on. But what we know is that Elvis's ring is still out there, and nobody knows anything about Priscilla's ring other than this replica. And that's where we're going to end it for today. And I'm going to leave everybody with a song. And Gunn says, well, why so much fuss about it? That's a good question, Gunn. And probably one I should have spent more time on. Because it's really about symbols, right? One of them lost the symbol of their vows. And so it's very symbolic. And Elvis lives this very mythical life. And some people will tell you that their relationship dissolved because Elvis should never have been married and that he cheated on Priscilla. And if he had lost his wedding ring, well, that fits very well into that story. And if you're Priscilla and you would like to present a story like that, especially if you're writing a book, well, that's the story that you want to present. Because it makes you look better. But if you're the one who lost the ring, and you yourself cheated, and you yourself led to the downfall of the marriage, which of course Priscilla did, and I'm not saying that Elvis didn't. They both played a part in the dissolution of their marriage. But Priscilla, if she lost the ring first, well, that fits very well into a story if she cheated first as well. And many people would tell you that she did. Now, I'm not saying which way it is either way. I'm just saying that there's a very interesting amount of symbolism in a story that one person has been very careful to tell it a certain way. Another person has backed her up who was there. But another person who has no investment in the story at all tells us it's completely opposite of what these two say. A man who's made virtually no money from any books. He did make money from a shop that he ran where he sold items that he handcrafted as replicas of what he made for Elvis. But I don't think it's quite the same thing. So it's all up to you guys to determine who's telling the truth on this one and who's not, and who lost their ring and who didn't. My personal opinion is that Priscilla lost her ring. She covered it in the story. She made a story about having a replica made for Elvis. No one's ever seen this replica because it's never come up for auction. At least that I know of. Could still be at Graceland. Not saying it doesn't exist. But a man who doesn't really have a dog or a horse in the race, he says he spent time, a full evening on his hands and knees looking for Priscilla's ring. And I'm going to let it go there because I'm not here to try to hammer home truth or my opinion into anyone. I can only say what I see in the source material, and you all get to see what you want to see in the source material, and everybody gets to have their own opinion. And when we come back, we're going to hear more stories like this, and we're going to dig deeper into more of these kind of disagreements among the memories of the folks. And I'm not saying any of them are lying, because maybe that's the way they remember it. But it sure seems like we know where one of the rings are, and we don't know where the other one is. And Colleen says, was David Stanley there when they were looking for it? No, he was only a 12-year-old boy. And he was spending most of his time in school and on Dolan Drive. If he was there, Vernon would be there. But there's no mention of him. I think this is just some adults looking for it. And Gunn says, so the ring mystery is solved then. I would like to think it is. but I don't know that I have enough to prove for sure that it is. But I do have enough to call into question a lot of people's memories. And Colleen says that the story doesn't add up. Nope, it sure doesn't. But you all, you keep on taking care of business. I'm going to leave you with this song. And I don't know if he really gave David Stanley that ring or not, but I know that according to Donna Presley, he gave us everything.
Oh, 17, snow on the ground, Circle G, love all around. He bought that ranch, opened the gate, said come on in, let's celebrate. Tractor pulling through the snow, laughter rising, spirits glow. Both behind, wives and men, family fun again and again. He wasn't just a star in lights, he was the warmth in winter nights. Kindness wrapped in velvet flame, a heart that never played the fame. He gave us joy, he gave us praise, a piano song in a quiet place. From a jack to a king, in the moonlight ring, he gave us love, he gave us wings. Circle G, where the angels sing, he gave us everything. Riding horses, legs so still, bridge and cross on the quiet hill. Barbecue smoke, stories told, moments more precious than gold. He'd ask me who I'm dating now, what I dream, what I'd allow. He cared like kin, not just a name. You live for love, not for acclaim. He wasn't just a voice on stage, he was the soul behind the page. A man who'd sing to heal your day and laugh at midnight, lose away. He gave us joy, he gave us grace, a piano song in a quiet place. From a jack to a king, in the moonlight ring, he gave us love, he gave us grace. Circle G, where the angels sing, he gave us everything. A shadow in the night, famous face, but heart so bright. Couldn't walk the street like you and me, so we built a world where we were free. He gave us joy, he gave us grace, a piano song in a quiet place. From a jack to a king, in the moonlight ring, he gave us love, he gave us way. Gave us everything. Yes, he gave us everything.